We hear about tech stacks for accounting firm. We haven't heard about the talent stack, but we're going to hear about it today. In 60 seconds, Jeff Phillips, my co-host here on the Accounting Talent Podcast. What is a talent stack?
You've heard of a technology stack. They exist in all of our businesses. I like to think of a talent stack as the new organizational chart. Who's doing work at every level of the business? Where do they come from? Where do we hire them? And where is it appropriate to think about each different level and bucket of talent as we build our company? Rob, it's good to be with you and everybody who's watching or listening. I'm Jeff Phillips. I'm the CEO of Padgett. We are a tax and accounting franchise based in the United States. We're 58 years old. We're going through a wonderful modernization and transformation around our company. Before that, I started AccountingFly. AccountingFly is a recruiting and staffing firm that serves CPA firms and corporate accounting teams. We match CPAs with those employers, but we only fill jobs with remote US-based CPAs and accountants.
Amen to that. It's much needed. So we talked in the last episode, will be on whatever podcast app you get your shows about the problems. Just summarize for us, Jeff, where we got to there, because we pinned out a couple of articles that show some very alarming statistics for the accounting world.
I think most employers and people who have to hire talent in our profession are frustrated right now, Rob, and have been for some time. There are a lot of myths. There are a lot of difficult questions, and we are concerned about turnover. We are concerned about finding the right person for the job, training them, onboarding them, and we're worried about who's going to be here at this company in the future. You know, I think those are the questions that I hear on a daily basis. Why is it so hard to find good people? And the reasons behind that are we're in a challenging labor market where everybody is employed in our profession. There are a little bit fewer people coming into the profession. And people in between, you know, the ages of mid-20s and early 50s are leaving the profession faster than they had before. So those are freaking us out. And it's come in at a time where I think this industry was complacent with how it dealt with people. And there's a reckoning going on right now.
You say there's a reckoning there. That's such a strong phrase. Well, what do you mean by that?
I think what I mean by that is that our value proposition as a profession has grown weaker to the talent, especially the younger talent entering the profession or considering entering the profession. And we're struggling because college students and those who are beginning their careers are investigating career options. They're looking at accounting and they're comparing it to investment banking. They're comparing it to consulting. They're comparing it to working in progressive tech companies. And right now, as an industry, those industries are out competing us for the talent, and we've got to think about how we want to compete for that talent.
Yeah. We mentioned last time the brand of the accounting profession, the value proposition, if you like, and it's weaker for a number of reasons than other career choices that young professionals might go into. So we can refer back to that issue, but I'm intrigued about this idea of a talent stack. Jeff, we talked about it at the top of the show. It is a solution. We're giving some hope to people here. And this is the feature of the Accounting Talent Podcast. We don't mind flagging up the problems and the issues, but we want to give people some solutions as well. So talk to us a little bit more about the ideal talent stack.
Well, we always think about our organizational chart, right? The pyramid structure that the companies run on. What I think has happened is the people that fill those different roles and the roles themselves have changed. Where those people work has changed. And employers that get ahead of this curve and understand what this new talent stack look like will win, because despite the labor challenges that we have, there are accountants in our sector, in our profession, who want to work at CPA firms or in corporate accounting teams. And what we have to do is go and know where they are, what they want, offer them what they want in exchange for what we need from them. So the talent stack is really just a new philosophy about thinking about who are we hiring, who is best for each role, and how do we make them productive and give them an amazing career journey.
And when I think about a tech stack, it's having everything seamlessly joining together and working together so that it's so that we get the right outcomes. So with the talent stack, I guess we'll bring in all the different pieces of talent together. We could throw in the recruitment, the attraction, the onboarding, that first 90 or 100 days, whatever you do it, the first year, the mentoring, the coaching, the people development. It all goes into a talent stack, filling strategically the gaps in the org chart, getting your succession planning right. Am I understanding that concept right?
Yes, it revolves around the fact that in order to have a successful firm, one of the key legs of the stool is that you have a predictable and reliable hiring system. And if you're a firm here in the United States and you're in Atlanta, Georgia, let's say, there's a finite number of CPAs available for your firm, and it's shrinking a little bit. And hiring just in one market is incredibly competitive. So where else can you go to go and find people who are qualified, maybe the best player for the position to work in your firm that might be based in Atlanta? So the talent stack is saying, where can we find high leverage staff to work inside our firm? And how can we create the most value from those employees and create the most value from those employees as they work for our business?
I'm thinking that the old way of doing it would be hire people within a 20, 30-mile radius of your office, and there's a good labor pool around there. So you've got plenty to go at. But these days, you're right. Atlanta, Georgia could apply to any town or city, particularly the big ones. It's so expensive to live in London or name any other big city there. So you go further and further out. So as examples of where to get this talent from, where are we looking?
So I think it all starts with a thesis that we're going to stop caring that my next hire works in my office. And if you can adapt to that mindset and the management practices that allow for that, you can begin to tap into global talent. You can begin to tap into domestic remote talent. You can begin to tap into freelancers who work inside your business for temporary projects, or in our case, a tax season. And you can begin to build a team of professionals who work globally. And the benefits of this are increased margin. The benefits are filling a role maybe a tax manager in Michigan that used to take a year or year and a half to fill. You can fill it in 30 days. And you can find the best player for the position. So the prerequisite of all of this is we're going to care less about the geographic location of where our team works in the future. And there's a lot of small firms. We have over 30,000 small accounting firms in the United States, and I hope they're listening. And a lot of them will say, this won't apply to me. And I promise you, it applies to you too.
Well, wait a minute, Jeff. I got to stop you because all of our audience are crying at you right now or shouting at you down the microphone to say, hey, we're just bringing our people back to work. The pandemic's over. We want them back in the office. And this is probably the partners mostly shouting this. But we want command and control. We want to be able to see what they're doing. We want to build culture and build everyone back together and fulfill the brand of the firm. We can't do that if Jeff's telling us that we need to go remote and go out of state and out of country. So what's the deal?
Culture, process, systems, and excellence are absolutely available inside companies where some of the people work in a headquarters and some of the people don't. It's not easy, but the case I'll make to you is this. If you make this adjustment, you can win. And the other case I want to make is that you have to, because we talked about Atlanta a second ago. Let's say there are 3,000 CPAs in Atlanta. Well, there are 700,000 roughly in the United States. Why don't we go and find the best player for the position every time? And in doing so, we're giving that new hire something they want in this profession, which is a work anywhere opportunity.
That's not the old way, though, is it, Jeff? And we know that accounting holds on to the old ways in so many different areas.
And we're just stealing from the tech industry. There are companies, there are billion-dollar unicorn companies that do not have a corporate office. That is all work from home.
Yeah.
And we can take a page from them, and we can hire our next tax senior, our next audit manager, our entry-level hires remotely. And Rob, it doesn't have to all be that way, but because every firm is different, every human is different. But if we think deeply about this, there are situations where we can apply offshoring or remote work effectively to create that predictable and reliable hiring outcome.
The pandemic showed us that remote could work. And maybe the arguments for productivity and trust and building culture are dead because they've all been solved. They've all been proved. We can do it, remote working. But just give us a sight of what good remote working looks like, Jeff.
So my definition of remote work is a little bit different than what I think a lot of US-based firms think it is. They believe remote work.
So you want to rewrite remote working right now?
Remote working for a lot of firms means I'm going to let our staff work from their home, but all of our staff work in our town of Dallas, Texas, for example. Remote work to me is our firm in Dallas has a corporate office, and we have staff in Dallas, and we have staff all over the country and all over the world. And we are tied together through values, through a culture, and through great systems and processes that deliver excellent service to our clients. And I want to reemphasize one thing. A business's value is driven by a few core characteristics, right? Growth rate, net income, compensation. One of the key things that anyone that will ever want to buy your book of business is going to say, can this company predictably and reliably hire talent to fuel the company? And I think the days of relying on your local market to find all of your talent are over. Is it hard to hire remote staff? It's not hard to find them. It is hard to integrate them into a team. Rob, some employers do not want to do this. I understand that. But I'm looking into the future, watching this over a decade of experience in this topic. And you cannot predictably and reliably hire talent if you're expecting them all to work in your office in your city.
What about that old school view that I want to shake somebody by the hand? I want to feel their handshake. I want to look in the whites of their eyes. I want to see how they are around our people. I want to take them to a coffee at a local coffee shop and see how they are with the waitresses. Those old school ways of recruiting where it wasn't so much what happened in the interview, but it was getting a vibe, a feel about someone to see if they would fit into your culture. How do you do that with someone on the other side of the world?
Yeah, I didn't say it was easy. And you're right that it's a challenge, and it presents a unique set of hardships for businesses. My argument is that you have to do it. So there are plenty of firms in the United States that are fully remote and carry very different ways of hiring people. But a lot of these firms, interestingly, are dealing with clients over Zoom. Let's not forget our client base has increased the use of remote work and
True.
the use of remote relationships.
Yeah. And back in the day, Jeff, clients would come into the accounting office, wouldn't they, and go through their accounts, would invite the client in. Sometimes we'd go to their premises. But these days, there are clients that have never met their accountants, never even seen them, but the work still gets done.
Yeah. This is true for corporate clients. It's true for small business clients like the ones I work with in my role. But, one thing I'll say is that you can absolutely have an effective interview process remotely and over Zoom or Teams. But also a lot of times in hiring, and especially in training, this is where you might want to go and meet the person and shake their hand in person. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I encourage it. I would have a discovery day or a final round of interviews in the office, if there's an office, or in person at a WeWork or a coffee shop. I would also encourage offices to have remote employees, but mix in-person meetings, events, quarterly fly-ins, meet them at a project site, take them to dinner, teams getting together once a quarter. Yes, that costs money, but it costs less money to not fill essential roles inside a business.
Yeah.
And again, we want predictable and reliable recruiting.
I love what
so
you're
we can
saying,
hire
Jeff,
people.
in that you're starting to give firm owners, leaders, tangible, practical steps that they can take. And I want to ask you a little bit more about that. First, just paint me a picture of what will happen to the firm owners, the leaders, the partners that don't get on board with remote working and building a talent stack with a little more flexibility.
Well, we call it the spiral of death, Rob. So an organization has a set number of people and a lot of work that they have to do. And I'm thinking about accounting teams, especially.
And I have heard accountants tell me that we've just won a big contract. If we don't hire 10 more people in the next 3 months, we're not going to be able to deliver on this client work. That's a frightening place to be.
I'm thinking about a mid-market CPA firm that I know very well. And recently, they had 3 of their 12 audit team poached by a much larger CPA firm in another state who gave this team a 20% pay bump and the opportunity to work from home. And this in the market where this firm exists, right? So they're a mile from their old employer working for a firm on the East Coast.
Wow.
And so what happens is what's their amount of client work has not changed, but there are now 7 people doing the work of 10. What do you think is going to happen to those 7 people now? So there's much more being asked of them, and now they are being crushed by the pressure of the workload that was distributed across 10 people last year.
Not just that, but if that firm does manage to hire 3 more people, guess who's going to have to train them and develop them and mentor them and nurture them?
But this firm is in a smaller US-based city. And because they're only willing to hire people in that small US city, and because every CPA in that town is already gainfully employed, the odds of them predictably hiring, they can't place a bet that they're going to fill those 3 roles. And so the spiral starts to take effect. One person leaves because they're sick of the overwork. They're going to take another job. Now there's 6 people left doing the work of 10. Oh, and by the way, the industry is growing, so they've added work that's required for 11 people, and the partners aren't willing to not say no to clients. So the next person leaves. That's actually happening in the firm that I'm describing, and I imagine that it's not the only one. And so when you shut down your ability to predictably and reliably make hires, you've crushed that system by not embracing remote work and offshoring concepts. You're creating so much overwhelm and stress for the existing team that it's going to crumble. Now, the implication of that is dire. And Rob, that's a scenario that's playing out quite frequently in the US.
I want to ask in a different episode the effect of private equity money and VC money coming into accounting firms and the different business models and comp structures. But just as we bring this episode to a close, Jeff, you've hinted at some practical steps owners and leaders can make to move towards a more joined up talent stack and a more remote model. What initial steps or next steps would you get them taking to leave them with some hope and some encouragement?
Well, we once worked with a CPA firm in downtown San Francisco that had an accounting manager position open for a year and a half. And after a year and a half of pleading with a managing partner, I asked them to consider hiring a remote accounting, it was a tax manager. Encourage them to hire a remote person. We filled that role in 3 weeks for them. That was 8 years ago. That tax manager is still there at the firm and thriving, and it plugged an important talent asset, a human being, into the firm. And did they have to make adjustments to make this work? Absolutely. In fact, the hire was in Philadelphia, working for a firm in the exact opposite side of the continent. So the practical steps is, I would love to come back and talk about when it's appropriate for a firm to engage offshore talent, because that is a thriving opportunity for American firms. There is talent. There's exceptional talent at a much lower wage rate in the Philippines, in Mexico, in India, that is available and trained to connect with firms. I'd like to talk about when it's appropriate to hire here in the United States, but a domestic remote resource, a full-time person that doesn't work in your city. If you're a tax firm, there are opportunities to hire remote freelance tax professionals who know your software, who can be trained on your processes, who will come back every tax season. But Rob, you're not making a full-time hire. You're just hiring a resource for 3 months that alleviates that stress and prevents that spiral of death I was talking about. I'd love to talk about integrating those team members into an existing office-based team so that culture can thrive inside a remote and distributed organization. Talk about getting them aligned and how to measure their productivity across hybrid teams. We've learned a lot because the pandemic forced us to start working remotely, and it was difficult, but we've also become so much more effective in the hiring of remote talent. And the last piece of hope I will tell you, if you'll embrace this new talent stack, it's a system that will predictably and reliably hire great people into the firm. And I can give you 1,000 examples of that result. In my own firm, I can give you examples of that. So there's amazing hope. All we have to do is address the fact that they want a career journey and flexibility and want to work from where they want to work. And it's hard to get into that as a decision maker. But if you can embrace it on a small scale, make that first remote hire, maybe just a 3-month resource to help with taxes, it's going to start chipping away at your capacity problems that you currently have.
Yeah. And although you give a lot of US examples, I can assure you and our audience all over the world that it's much the same in the UK. We are short of teachers, we're short of nurses, we're short of doctors, we're short of accountants, we're short of pretty much everyone. And there are so many different answers to the problem if we just broaden our horizons and cling on less to the past and the old ways of doing things. Jeff Phillips from AccountingFly, it's great having you on the show and walking on this road with us over the next few months as we build up the hope for the accounting talent landscape. And you've got so many more great ideas to share over coming weeks. We'll see you on next week's show, folks, here on the Accounting Talent Podcast. Share it with your friends. It comes out every Thursday and on YouTube also. We'll look forward to seeing you on the next episode.